Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit TRE.radio.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests. Viewpoint.
It is Tuesday, the 14th of January. Welcome to Viewpoint Talk Radio Europe's current affairs programme with a panel of invited guests where we discuss the issues of the day with you for the next 2 hours. If there's something you want to get your views across, if you've got a particular bugbear, if you want to let the world know what is getting behind your collar and making you itch in the most inappropriate places, then this is the show for you. Joined in the studio by Dr. Jerry Hagan and Timothy Stafford. Yes, indeed, it's the first Tim and Jerry show of the new year. Amongst the subjects we may be looking at are the latest news coming out of the States. We're looking at the LA fires as well. Perhaps a little look at that. There's a lot of discussion at the moment saying that rich people are now getting private security and even private firefighters to guard their homes. News coming out as well, expecting some calls in with Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez saying he wants to bring in 100% tax on non-EU property purchases. We had a discussion about that. Looking at a report that came out of The Guardian saying that the millennials and Generation Z in a recent survey said they would prefer a strong dictatorship to a democracy, and anything else that is getting you hot under the collar. If you want to get involved with the show, and we might even talk about Greenland, you never know. If you want to get involved in the show.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
But before we get into all of that, because this is the last viewpoint, because before President-elect Trump becomes our President of the United States of America. Meanwhile, let's have a look at the front pages, though, this morning, looking at what they are saying. Well, top this morning is the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Telegraph saying that Rachel Reeves' future as Chancellor has been thrown into doubt by what it calls the economic turmoil. Good morning, Mary. No, thank you. The economic turmoil of the past few days. It quotes an unnamed Labour backbencher saying the Prime Minister should consider sacking her if the situation doesn't improve over the next few months. Thank you. The Times points out that Sir Keir Starmer, when questioned at a news conference yesterday about Reeves' future, initially refused to confirm she'd be staying in the post for the duration of this Parliament, saying only that she was doing a fantastic job. The confirmation came from his official spokesperson a few hours later. There's a suggestion in the Daily Mail that Starmer has been left struggling to contain turmoil in the Treasury. It says pressure is mounting both on the Chancellor and Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiqui, whose family in Bangladesh is facing corruption allegations. Siddiq denies any wrongdoing. The headline reads, "Two lame ducks," which is flanked by pictures of the ministers. The Chancellor's proposals are considered, the Chancellor's prospects are considered in a more offbeat way by the Daily Star. It recalls its own comparison between the length of Liz Truss's tenure as Prime Minister and the shelf life of a salad ingredient. Should we be popping out for another lettuce? Ask its front page. But in an opinion piece, the Eye argues that Starmer is unlikely to ditch Reeves. This is partly because, in its words, there is no politician with whom this Premier's fortunes have been more intertwined. The paper points out that if the Prime Minister did replace her, he would need to decide on what the alternative economic strategy would be. "My girl's voice was not heard" is the Daily Mirror's front page. It's a quote from Angela Dawes, whose daughter Kiana took her own life after more than 2 years of abuse by her daughter Ryan Wellings. He was convicted yesterday at Preston Crown Court of assault and prolonged domestic violence, but cleared of manslaughter. The Guardian reports it could cost more than $1.6 trillion to get rid of toxic pollution across Britain and the EU over the next 20 years. The finding is the result of a year-long investigation by the Forever Lobbying Project, a collaboration between journalists and experts in 16 countries. Of particular concern are what the paper calls forever chemicals, human-made pollutants that don't break down naturally. Several papers, including the Financial Times, warned that British people who own homes in Spain but don't live there could soon be facing taxes of up to 100%. The move is part of a package being proposed by the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, to help tackle the country's housing shortage. Finally, The Sun welcomes the fact that screening for bowel cancer is being extended in England to those aged 50 and over. The paper says it's a victory for campaigner Dame Deborah James, who died of the disease in 2022. Having led calls for wider screening, the headline reads, Debs did it. So those front pages from the top. The Daily Telegraph, PM throws Reeve's future into doubt. And also Britain's paying 100% tax on produce in Spain. The Daily Mail, Treasury in turmoil. As the pound takes another battering, the PM scrambles to shore up his flailing Chancellor and is forced to declare full confidence in her scandal-hit deputy. No wonder the Tories say they're two lame ducks. The Guardian, Starmer backs Reeves and warns of ruthless public spending cuts. Meanwhile, the Eye benefits face cuts as Number 10 admits nothing is off the table in search for new savings. The Daily Express, it's now my life, my children's life, and my grandchildren's future at stake. This is a dairy farmer's great distress after the government's decision last year to limit inheritance tax relief for farms to 1 million. The farmer, Rue, tells the paper, it's now my life, my children's life, and my grandchildren's life at stake, as he calls for a reversal of the policy. That's the Express. The Times, excuse me, Times, Labour law threatens customers' free speech. That is, conversations could amount to harassing staff. This is saying that new polling indicates Reform UK is effectively tied with Labour amongst voters, pushing the Conservatives into third place. Innocent monster. This is the Metro labelling Ryan Wellings after he was found guilty of assault and prolonged domestic violence. The Mirror, my girl's voice was not heard. A daughter's brutal ex is cleared of manslaughter after she was driven to suicide. Financial Times, this is a story with EU yards carry out crucial repairs for Russian Arctic gas tanker fleet, and also non-EU buyers face 100% property tax. And finally, as always, the Daily Star, which leads, as I mentioned before, with their take on the Prime Minister gives his embattled Chancellor the dreaded vote of confidence. Should we be popping out for another lettuce? And those, for better, worse, or salad ingredients, are your headlines on this Tuesday, the 14th of January.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
Always live, always lively. Joined in the studio by Tim Stafford and Dr. Jerry Hagan. Tim, good morning to you, sir.
Oh, Happy New Year, Giles. I don't think my mic's on.
It's on, yes, you're on.
Is it? Oh,
you
right,
need to turn yourself up a little bit.
Yeah.
Getting technical now.
Exactly, honestly, you know.
Have you turned me on?
You're on the wrong one.
You're on the, yeah.
You're on that one.
You see, there you go. You see? How's that then? How do you feel better now, Tim?
I can, yes.
You can hear me now, can you?
Yes, it's much better.
That's a mixed blessing.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, indeed. A new year, new hope, and yet the same old feeling.
A new year, the same thing. Yeah, well, yes, but there have been a few alterations.
Right.
And let us hope that they are positive.
And that is the message from Tim Stafford from Tim. Yeah. Jerry, how are you this morning? Good to have you back in the studio.
I'm very good, thank you. Happy New Year to you.
I know. I think. Well, I mean, it is the 14th. I think, but you do see because Christmas in Spain starts around the 6th, basically December, and doesn't finish until 4 weeks later. Yeah. There are an awful lot of people that you haven't seen, so you do find yourself saying Happy New Year to people up until about the
up north in Scotland, Orkney and Shetland. It's Happy New Year for a month.
Is it
partying? Yeah.
Yeah, well, because it doesn't get light now. until, you know...
No.
And then you got Burns Night coming up, of course, which is when is Burns Night coming up?
Well, Burns' anniversary is 25th, but Burns Nights are for a couple of weeks before and a couple of weeks after. We've got a big one on Saturday night.
Have you now?
Yeah, at the golf club.
Oh, well, there you go.
Piper,
haggis are
everything.
losing their lives.
The haggis, yeah, I'm remember to buy free-range haggis rather than factory-farmed haggis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the purists.
For the purists. Right. Just want to let's kick off with this news that is breaking. It was all across the social media. I mean, I got a call this morning. I got a message this morning when I woke up, and that was BC before coffee, which is all the dangerous time to get in contact with me. But from Campbell Ferguson. Good morning to you, Campbell. Saying, have you seen this news breaking about this 100% tax on Spanish and on non-EU residents? I.e., this will pertain to British after El Brexit, as we call it in these parts, Brexit. This is the latest coming out. So Cookie has very kindly sent me through a quick update, which is non-resident taxes in Spain. What does it mean for you? And I'll just read it. But the phone lines have already gone off, so we go straight to the phones as we do. Good morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning, it's Teresa from the A7. It's not gone well so far this morning, and I haven't had coffee yet.
Right, so you have my
question
sympathies.
is, why do the British media, and I use the word lightly, imply that it's only the British that will have to pay this tax and not any non-EU person? Because it feeds to the Daily Fail readers that Spain's being nasty to us now because we didn't vote for Brexit and they need us more than we need them and all that other... I can't think of the word I can say on the
Should we say
radio.
stuff?
Stuff, yeah. Or bollocks for the silent B, that they continually spout at you.
Well, because I mean, like putting the late Diana, Princess of Wales, on the front cover, it will shift copies, won't it? And it just seems that whole thing that the nasty EU is ganging up on the sovereign nation.
It's Britain, yeah, just because they wanted their own sovereignty. There was an excellent piece on the World Service the other day about the true cost of Brexit, which will never be broadcast in the UK. Well, it's for the world, but the British people, apart from people like you and I, won't ever listen to it because it doesn't speak to their narrative. It's absolutely a scandal how much money they've lost.
Yeah, indeed.
And it's impossible not to feel schadenfreude because the two main people who voted for Brexit were farmers and fishermen, and they have been worst affected by Brexit, far worse than any other group.
Thank you for your call, and the phone lines are going off as I thought they might. Thank you, Teresa. I hope the A7 goes a little bit better. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning, Giles. It's Cookie.
Good morning,
How are you?
Cookie.
Are you good?
I think so. It's I'm only on my third coffee of the morning. So what? Now you very kindly sent me some stuff in. So people are going to be seeing that headline and going, "Good grief, 100% tax. World's gone mad. Sanchez has lost his thing." What's your take on it? Being in the know as you are.
Okay, it's. I would guide anybody to read that article that I've sent out. It's from a law company in the Costa del Sol, and it's actually referring to the taxes on the property, like EB and all the other things that apply to property. It's not 100% tax on when you purchase the property, because at the moment it's up to 12%. It's not referring to that. It's referring to the taxes that you have to pay: property tax, EB, wealth tax, and other things. And it's for all non-EU people. So it's going to apply to all third country nationals, so America, Canada, if it goes through. And this is the other thing, if it goes through, because he's just said this, nothing's gone through, and we just have to see. So I would guide anybody to read that article that I've sent to you, and it makes a lot more sense, okay? Because it has to go through to the bulletin as well, for it to be actually made legal. So I think he's just kind of saber rattling a little bit, and trying to get the votes of the Spanish people because of his failure with what happened in Valencia. And when you actually look at the demographics of people that are buying in Spain, yes, Brits are still quite high, but a lot of the property that's being purchased on the Costa del Sol is by EU citizens that don't need a golden visa. So, yeah, I think it's just scare tactics. So, yeah, if you wanted to share that article out to other users as well, and other listeners, sorry, Giles, please feel free to do so. It makes a lot more sense, that article, once you read it.
Thank you very much for that as well. But, I mean, is it going to have anything? Because as I said, it's only... This is something saying that non-EU... and this is people who are using these as holiday homes. They will get this come into this taxation, in the crosshairs of the taxation, snipers, as it were. But, I mean, does it... I was just talking about this outside before we started the show, and surely the problem isn't people using... Because, I mean, Sanchez was going on about, here in the West, and we're seeing the West is going to become between sort of rich, landlords and the poor, oppressed working people. But if developers didn't sort of build willy-nilly in these areas, and there was a social housing program put in, here I go because I'm standing on that soapbox in a minute, there was a social housing put in decades ago, along with the transport infrastructure that actually functioned, then you wouldn't have these problems.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. What they needed to do on the Costa del Sol, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, is they should have, yes, we've got these luxury, beautiful, beautiful properties on the coast, but what the government and the local junta should have done is actually built properties for social housing for Spaniards and people on lower incomes, and those can only be rented out or bought by people on lower incomes. But they haven't, and this is, again, it's all driven by greed. People just want to make money, make a lot of money, and the amount of people now in the Costa del Sol since COVID and lockdown, it's crazy. And it is. I'm not going to say it's unsustainable, but yeah, it's a very, very crowded place here. But yeah, they need to sort out social housing. But what the other side that I find really interesting is the amount of migrants that Sanchez is actually letting into the country. He's housing them in hotels, giving them jobs, all of this, but he's neglecting the Spanish citizens. So, what do you do?
952-78-4000 if you want to get your views across. Thanks, Cookie, for that, and I will get that link out on the TRE officials Facebook page a little bit later. Thanks for the calls in there. There's been an awful lot of talk about this, obviously, and we talk about why, and Teresa said, why did the British media pick up on this? But there has seemed to be this, if you like, this campaign, or at least in some of the British press, saying, Spain don't want us and we don't need them. But we have seen an anti-tourism protests by people on the islands, for example. Barcelona, the Catalans, of course, are an interesting case in point, saying, we don't want we don't want tourism. And this, again, perhaps is part of a politician or a government saying, okay, well, we get this, and so we're going to put these measures in place. Panel.
Yes, I think it's a symptom, this suggestion of new legislation, of a more generalised view in Europe and certainly the USA, that there's a perception over there, they're having the culture taken away in their own nations by immigration, and tourism seems to have been attached to that in this case, and that they don't like it. It's now become much more available to use strong terminology in talking about it. That the Polish, for example, are very resistant to any form of immigration that might happen to them. There's virtually bordering on riots in the UK because of it. Trump is doing what he's doing with the Mexicans and other South American nationalities. And the Italians in terrible, terrible trouble, so too the French with the immigration that's out of control. And just recently the Germans reacting to perceived levels of danger and terrorism. So, this is a very general view that it can't go on. The housing crisis would be solved in most of these places if a very, very strong sort of Australian class immigration policy was put in place.
And to the lines we go again. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Sorry, it's me again.
Hello, you again.
I'm very against any kind of anti-immigrant rhetoric as an immigrant myself, and Sanchez recently went on record saying that Spain needs more immigrants, otherwise they won't be able to pay the pensions of the people who are now working, which I think is a very salient point, and one which the British government are completely overlooking. And all of those stop-the-boats people don't realise that Stephen Ritson has given me statistics about how people who emigrate to a country put more into the system than the people who are born there as a percentage, which I quote to racist people every time they try and tell me, oh, they're coming over here and taking our jobs and taking our money and sponging off the system. Stephen has the statistics to prove that that's not true. Anyway, as an immigrant, I just wanted to stand up for myself.
Thank you very much indeed.
I thought this was about housing. I didn't know it was about anything other than the economy. I thought it was about number of people versus number of houses.
Jerry.
Looking at it from a different perspective, really, is Sanchez not just making an empty gesture a populist gesture to the masses?
Politician doing that?
Yeah, and the point about the Daily Mail or whoever saying it's against the Brits. Well, the point of a newspaper is to sell a newspaper, and if your average reader is an angry gammon, then that's obviously the kind of headline you would want to put up there, saying Spain being back to Brits. I don't think it's quite correct to have talk about the immigration of people with money trying to buy houses here compared to poor people coming from the Middle East where we're fleeing conflict zones, etc. Because the people coming and buying houses here are not going to be claiming benefits. They're not going to expect the Spanish government to put them up in hotels. So it's a different kind of immigration, subtle but different. I think Sanchez is implying that he's doing this tax on people who are buying the houses not to live in, to speculate. I really don't think that's a major part of tourism, of the people buying houses in the Costa del Sol. They want it as a second home, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. But the problem is, obviously, they'll be saying, "Oh, well, this is housing that could be used by Spanish national." But the problem is that if you look at obviously we're based on the Costa del Sol, but you look at Mallorca, you look at Ibiza, you look at Tenerife. These are land that could be developed for social housing, but it hasn't been because obviously there is the inherent greed of town halls and hunters and property developers that if they have a site they can build on, what do you think they're going to do? Are they going to build 300 houses for social housing without a government incentive, or are they going to build 30 luxury villas on the same thing?
Yeah, and if they build the luxury villas, they're not taking away housing directly from people who need social housing. The problem is the social housing hasn't been built. And Sanchez or whoever's in power should really be addressing that. In the days of Franco, he knew that you needed to provide good housing, and he went all out to make sure everybody had their own home. Those days have gone now, but he did understand the political importance of making sure people had houses.
Yeah,
I'm not defending his.
I was going to. Careful where we go with that.
50 years on.
We can come back onto that because of I think Pollock came out later. Tim.
Yes, I think in the UK anyway, the permissions that are given are very often tempered by the necessity for any developer, including social housing or affordable housing, as you might call it. Otherwise, it is less likely that permissions will be granted. That's a way to play it, that you could, in Costa del Sol, you could build, yes, we'll give you permission to build these villas if, as part of your package, you are prepared to undertake building of property in the land that we have already allocated for the purpose of affordable housing for local people.
Because this is one of the things that I don't like to mention or say Dubai's got it right, but I am of the understanding if you build in Dubai, if you're going to build a 7-star luxury thing, you have to make sure that you put money into the infrastructure, i.e. water, provisions for water, etc., etc.
And on Tim's point, certainly in London, when you do a developer does a new development, an X percentage of that must be social development as well, and on the same site. You can't build it some other part of London. something like 20% needs to be social housing. Certainly that happened where I was living in Kew.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to those great philanthropists of the Victorian age. I mean, if you are familiar with the layout of southwest London, I mean, we've got the Guinness. Was it the Guinness places in just off the Fulham Broadway tube station at Stamford Bridge? There are large, and World's End, and the area down there as well. There are large. So we perhaps a return to Victorian philanthropism then is what we need. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Studio at TRE.radio is the email. Let's go to the WhatsApps and see what's they're saying at the moment. Morning, Gary, who says, nice cornucopia of gentlemanly panelistic views in a polite and intelligent way. There you go. That's you lot, by the way. That's you. By the way, the UK is exceptional due to A, it used to be in the UK, B, the distance, thus economic present and past ties still strong. Is any normal person saying the UK is and should be treated the same as Papua New Guinea just because both are outside the UK? Get real, people. Please note the recent survey says in the Netherlands regards immigration and the economic plus and minuses. Immigration is always needed. It's just the type that this screaming of racist closes down the conversation. Thus, we are where we are. The thoughts of Gary. Very, very esoteric. Morning, Cooley. Live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning, Giles. Peter.
Morning, Peter.
Good morning. Poor Brits, eh? That's all, the world is against us. There's 195 countries in the world, I think, roughly. It changes by the day. 27 European countries. So what's that? 168 countries affected by this. So I don't think they're picking on the Brits somehow. And if you read the article, it's 23,000. Was it 23,000 properties sold to non-European residents last year? I think it was. Can someone confirm that? I think.
Yeah. Okay.
23,000.
24,000. Right, okay. In the third quarter, here we go. In the third quarter of 2024, non-Spaniards, including EU citizens, bought 24,700 properties in Spain, accounting for 15% of all real estate purchases in the country. The largest group of non-Spanish buyers were Britons, who made it 8.5% of all foreign deals, followed by Germans, then Moroccans, then Poles and Italians. That's according to the Association of Registrars in Spain.
Okay, so can you just make that, because I read that article. So this is a non-European thing, is it? So if you're a European, you can still buy without the 100%.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So,
well, and also, if you are intending to become resident in Spain, it doesn't affect you. So, if I am moving to the Costa del Sol, for example, right, then it won't affect me. It's purely non-residents purchases.
Okay. Well, on a purely selfish thing, as when Thatcher introduced, I think what was it, the tax on the property, you'll get a bump in property prices because everybody will want to buy before it happens. So that's going to drive prices up and not down. There's a supply, as people mentioned, supply and demand. No government is ever going to increase the supply of houses and outweigh the demand to bring down the price of properties, because property for the last 40 years has been a bank, because property can keep ahead of inflation, and therefore people use their house as a bank. That's why they remortgage every 2, 3, 4, 5 years and take some money out of the house, thinking the house can only go up. So that's never going to happen because it suits governments to have a low demand, and governments should never be involved in supplying housing for people. That's the private sector. But the private sector also deliberately keep demand higher than the supply because they're making a fortune. Now, if you really wanted to do something about it, if governments want to do something about it, the first thing I would do is introduce a land tax. So if you buy a piece of land, there's a 5% after 12 months, 5% tax if you don't build on it, if it's zoned for building. If it's not, then it's different. If you don't build in 24 months, it's 10%, and in 36 months, it's 15%. Force the builders to buy, because we all know big builders, land bank. They buy when it's cheap and build when it's expensive. So if the government really want to do something, force the builders to build on the land they own. And when I say force, just make it very, very difficult for them to hang on to that land, because they'd be paying taxes on it. As Adam Smith of the Adam Smith Institute once said, if you want to destroy a city, I think I've said this before, 2 ways to do it: bomb it or introduce rent caps. And also, people are not factoring in here because this is Trump's tariffs, 100% tariff. That's what it is. Do it on cars. Now, what they're not factoring in, and this is the southern tip of Europe, the retirement capital of Europe, the sunniest, warmest place in Europe. It's where Christian meets Muslim. It's where East meets West. It's a unique place. Many people want to come here. So you can't factor in normal property movements when you're looking at everybody flocking here to retire. Many retiring early now because of the COVID and things like that. So many of them retiring early. This place is booming. We've got a World Cup coming in, 5 years' time? They're going to have to build for that. Well, what are they going to build? 5-star hotels? So, just introduce a land tax, stop interfering. But the one good thing in that article, when I sped through it, was the tax breaks if you gave a property, if you rented a property to someone who is, for want of better words, on a lower pay and not renting it. Now, I've been involved in property since I bought my first house. I was 18. I couldn't tell you how many houses I had, flipped, rented, kept. My golden rule was always get in a good tenant, tell them it's their home, and leave them in there and come slightly under the rent. Therefore, you don't have the maintenance, you don't have the flipping, they're not all constantly looking for another place. Even allow them to decorate because it costs nothing to go in afterwards and whitewash it. Right. So if the government are prepared to tax breaks people who can put in those people, I personally would rather have a hospital worker living in my home, guaranteed income with a tax break off the government, than trying to constantly rent it out. Maintenance on any property is between 1% and 4% of its value. So there's some good in it, there's some bad in it. But as for picking on Brits, no way. There's 168 countries affected. Right. So, like I said, same thing's happening with cars. There's tariffs. People are going insular. So.
Thanks for the call in, Peter. Good to hear from you. Happy New Year, by the way. As you're one of the first callers in the new year. I think you actually were last week anyway.
I was last week. I didn't realise you had no calls. I didn't listen to the first half. Otherwise I wouldn't.
Thank you very much.
Rescued you.
What would I do without you? Thanks for the call in, Peter. 95278. If you want to get involved with the show, here are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us @TRE Talk Radio.
Let's have a look at this. Looking at Pedro Sanchez talking about non-resident property owners paying 100% of the property taxes. He's referring to a measure that involves an adjustment in the tax regime for property owners in Spain. The proposal, it's not law yet, is related to taxes that non-resident owners must pay for their properties in the country. This will not apply to people who are moving to Spain from, for example, the United Kingdom, the USA, or any other non-EU country on a visa. For example, the non-lucrative visa or the digital nomad visas, as they will be residents paying tax in Spain. In Spain, non-resident owners, those who do not live habitually in the country, already have to pay a number of property-related taxes. But in some cases, certain discounts or reductions are applied to the taxes they must pay compared to resident owners. One of the measures that's been discussed on several occasions and that Pedro Sanchez has mentioned involves eliminating those discounts for non-resident owners so they pay the full amount of the taxes that apply to them without any fiscal benefits. Property owners in Spain, whether residents or not, must comply with certain taxes. The most relevant ones are non-resident income tax, wealth tax. This is the tax levied on the net wealth of citizens and non-residents and non-residents must also pay for their assets located in Spain. There's an exemption for the first 700,000 euros of wealth, which may benefit some. Sanchez's proposal would involve eliminating certain exemptions or increasing taxes for non-residents. And the EB, property tax, municipal tax on property ownership. Non-resident owners must pay this tax like any other resident owner, although it's not affected by the proposal. However, some time ago, the European Court of Justice declared it was illegal for residents and non-residents to be treated differently regarding the IRPF tax, income tax. Could this be in UK? So we can only wait and see. It is possible that the measures for non-resident property owners to pay 100% of the taxes on their properties, as proposed by Sanchez, could create a new legal case if it is considered to involve tax discrimination against residents. Well, I think that's pretty much go. If non-residents are treated more unfavourably, this could violate European Union rules on non-discrimination and freedom of movement. If it happens, it could lead to intervention by the Court of Justice of the European Union. Therefore, while the measure could be defended on grounds of tax fairness or combating speculation, the legality of the proposal could depend on how it is implemented and the justifications provided for it. At the time of writing, this was an article come in, which was yesterday, it's not the law in Spain. Furthermore, this is a concept that has not been developed. It's only an announcement made by Pedro Sanchez. It would have to be written to Spanish law, the BOE, for it to be enforceable in Spain, of course. So there is an update on what we have there. Tim, you're nodding sagely.
Well, good luck with any challenge to the government on tax fairness. I think that would be an extremely difficult set of cases to win. But I'd like to add to this property conundrum in suggesting that there are a great many Spanish people, fully indigenous Spanish people, who have second properties and have been told, Juan, did you know that if you let out your little second home, you'll be getting not just $1,000 a month, you can get $1,500 a week in the height of the sea, and so on. So the greed of those who own second properties is not singularized by wealthy people. It's also people who are on a much more modest income and so on. Airbnb, all of these things that preclude, because they're used in these functions, preclude young people particularly of being able to afford housing in their own locality.
It's interesting because, I'll be with you in 1 second. Because talking about Airbnb, Sanchez has accused the 27,000 foreigners from outside who bought in Spain of not purchasing properties not to live in but to speculate. The golden visa, by the way, that runs out. That'll stop in April this year. And saying that Sanchez's plan includes several measures to reduce the impact of holiday and rental apartments on the property market after the local protests about over-tourism. Sanchez, there's going to be a crackdown on fraudulent seasonal holiday lets. There are too many Airbnbs and not enough homes, Sanchez said. So there you go. He's singing from your songbook, Tim. Perfectly, you could be a speechwriter. Jerry,
just an umbrella. Peter mentioned Adam Smith and Adam Smith himself wrote that for every man with a big house there are 50 men in poor houses, and this is capitalism basically. That's the overriding problem, and I'm not saying capitalism is a problem, but it's how do you deal with it in a free market. And Sanchez has come up with off-the-cuff idea of what he might do, but I still think it's a populist gesture rather than something that's going to be real.
952-784,000. A quick break and then back with more Viewpoint.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
Always live, always lively, joined by Dr. Jerry Hagan and Timothy Stafford. If you want to get involved with the show, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And a special hello to Campbell, who's not at the best of health at the moment, and otherwise would be phoning in. But I believe he's got a touch of the lurgy. But he says the following: apart from sending me a picture of the light at the end of the tunnel, is that a train coming, or is it indeed the Bullrog? This is his thoughts on this. Campbell from Survey Spain, of course, saying the highlights: Sanchez earthquake. So there you go. That's his highlights that will affect valuations and development. A legal mechanism will be established so that new public housing company has priority in the purchase of homes and land. Reforming the land law, the PERTE, the PERTE for housing, aimed at promoting innovation and modernisation of the industrialised and modular construction sector so that houses can be built in Spain in less time and at lower costs. The need to mobilise existing housing, public guarantees that will protect both owners and tenants who participate in affordable rentals, rehabilitation programme for empty homes, will also be launched to allocate them to affordable rentals. Aid will be granted to those who renovate a flat to put it up for affordable rent for at least 5 years. 100% exemption from personal income tax for owners who rent their property. That's according to the reference price index. Tax reform to Parliament so that tourist apartments are taxed as what they are, businesses. Promoting within the framework of the new European Directive on VAT. Application of a taxation to tourist rentals that is on par with other economic activities. Generally, the provision of all these state properties will remove many tenants from the private market, thus possibly reducing rents. After a thorough study, the purchase of homes by non-resident, non-EU foreigners will be limited. Specifically, the tax burden that they will have to pay in the case of purchase will be increased up to 100% of the value of the property. The regulation that pursues fraud in seasonal rents will be tightened, and a fund will be created so that regional and municipal governments can reinforce inspections. Aid for rent, purchase and rehabilitation for €200 million, benefiting more than 1.5 million households. A new state housing plan, for 2026, guarantees for the purchase of the first home and rental vouchers of €250 per month have been granted to more than 66,000 young people. Communities of neighbours can limit the proliferation of tourist apartments. That's an interesting one. Creation of a single register of seasonal accommodations and extension of the moratorium on evictions and the suspension of mortgage evictions until 2028. So there you go. Thank you, Cam, for that list. Exhaustive. I like that. The one that made me, and that's the first time I read it, is the communities of neighbours for proliferations of rental apartments. That's a good. I know several people who have had houses here since the 70s and 80s in communities, and suddenly in the last, since after that thing of which we do not talk, have said, we have people have come, they've sold it. An owner has sold it, a rental. Somebody's had the house for decades has sold it. It's been bought by a company, and now it is being rented out over the weekends, and then suddenly it's become, you suddenly have every weekend a new bunch
parties.
Of people. Yeah, exactly. And so that's got to be good for general lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree with that. And each community, I feel, should have the ability, or each block of housing, etc., should have the ability to decide for themselves whether they want to allow short-term rentals or not. I know when they bought it, that was allowed, but things are getting out of hand. I've got a friend who lives near me in a community like that, and in the summer it just goes mad. It's parties all the time. You're still up at 2 a.m. and not a nice place to live. You're spoiling the environment.
Indeed. Tim, you want to come on?
Yeah, I think if you had an existing community that had been there for many, many years and formerly owned by either British buyers or whatever, who've sold up to these companies who intend to make business ventures with holidaymakers, then there should be legislation, I would have thought, that would limit the percentage of those properties that can be used for that purpose. You can't have the whole community taken over as sort of come as as holiday accommodation, because that destroys communities. So there should be legislation of that kind, in my opinion, that it may be 20% or something like that. And even if that were not the case, then you could have a more stringent legislation that suggests that if you are buying one of these properties in this locality, that you must not, or you're denied the opportunity to let the property out for short-term lets. So it has to be either long-term lets or as your own accommodation.
Thank you very much. Right then, looking at going to the WhatsApps we go to. Morning, stop flirting, says one. Okay, am I flirting at you, gentlemen? I don't think yeah, yes indeed.
Subtle flirt.
Subtle flirt. I think it was maybe with Theresa. Another Brexit benefit, fair to say. Fair, I say. Countries are for people who live there. If you can't fix supply, then cut off a chunk of demand. If only the British figure that out in the UK. Sanchez actually said up to 100% of the value of the property. As you mentioned before, non-Spaniards, including EU citizens, in the third quarter bought 24,700 properties in Spain. Talking tourism and migration have become Spain's bread and butter, ironically. Sanchez isn't anti-immigrant, and looking at some more things, the issue is there's a way around this Sanchez proposal. Obtain residence first, perhaps by renting, then buy or build, which is what many immigrants do anyway. Looking at the article about, I've sent that through. There's taxes. Sanchez is referring to taxes on purchased properties like the EB, etc. If the community votes 60% against short-term rentals, then properties cannot be rented to holiday makers. Okay, thank you for that. This has been sent in by Charlotte. This is in from our colleagues at the SOAR. The government transfers 360 immigrants who arrive in the Canary Islands by boat to Malaga. I think they need to put a comma there. I think they transferred them not by boat, but migratory pressure that the Canary Islands forces the ministry to divert them to Costa del Sol, where they will be distributed to various points around Spain. It says here, so that's interesting. It's a new wave of immigrant migrants, and they're saying from there they've been taken to 4 buses at the Oh Nice Caledonia Hotel located in Benavice or in Bel Air, actually. Well, they remain temporarily housed until they are transferred again. Thank you for that, because I was kind of wondering, because I did see an awful lot of gentlemen of a sub-Saharan appearance wandering around the Bel Air area yesterday. So there you go. I thought it was a sports team in town. That just goes to show my thing. A lot of football teams, association football, Tim. It's association football. Association. Soccer. Americans will call it soccer anyway. They're doing their winter training apparently. So I thought they were a football team.
Very careful how we identify these roving teams, because we may.
Teams, not teens. But no, anyway.
But we may, for all we know, be labelled as racists.
Well, indeed. Well, we had the Work Finder Journal on last week. But this is an interesting move. So they are now moving migrants because as I said, I've heard that people have been saying this about the UK. It's full. I can't believe that Britain is full, but I can believe that maybe the Canary Islands is under pressure. Jerry, you were about to say something sage?
No, nothing clever. You expect me to say something?
You just said nothing clever. I thought that was
the Canary Islands at the farm room. It's a very dangerous crossing, much more dangerous than crossing the channel. And I think something like 100,000 people have died. Is that correct? Trying to get from mainland Africa to
the lines we go. Morning, Corley, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Good morning, Giles. It's Jason. How are you?
Morning, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm okay, yeah. I'm in a good place. I wanted to talk about something, the H5N1 virus, if I may.
Well, we've got 2 minutes, Jason, and...
well, we'll leave it till next week, then.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much for that, because we're talking about Spanish property, etc., etc. But thanks very much for your call in. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that comment on the WhatsApps. Indeedy. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. Thank you for sending in your various bits and pieces. If you want to get involved with the show, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio. To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
There are many reasons why people won't be comfortable being as connected as they are.
The Remix, a recap of the best interviews of the week.
We don't need role models, but sometimes it's nice to see a positive reflection of some of the decisions that you've made.
During that time, I asked myself a simple question. What does it mean to be a man? Because I'd done everything I thought a man was supposed to do to be happy, and I was absolutely miserable.
Tune in Saturdays and Sundays from 2 p.m.
Sometimes we have to live with the fact that we may never know the truth, and you have to be okay with that.
And right then, coming up to the end of the first half of you, but yeah, we're trying to keep things on. If we're on one subject, then we're trying to keep it relatively on one subject, as we has been in doing so. But in the second half of Viewpoint, because we're coming up to the end of the first half, we will be looking at a variety of subjects. We can look at the impact of certain social media sites, with Zuckerberg saying that he's going to dispense with fact checkers. Of course, Elon Musk has been making some political inroads, if you like, in Europe. We're looking also at this report that puts Reform UK on a tie with Labour and Conservatives in third place. We can look forth to the introduction or the re-inauguration of President-elect Trump. Plus a variety of other bits and pieces. But now we're going to the international news from London, and then the national news from Bob. We'll be back after this break.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, Viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown. Live comment and discussion with studio guests.
Viewpoint.
Always live, always lively. Welcome back to the second half of Viewpoint with myself, Giles Brown, and Tim Stafford and Dr. Jerry Hagan on the panel this morning. If you want to get your viewpoint across this morning, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Just a quick heads up, what's happening today? Well, following me is Stephen Ritson with Europe Today. Following that, of course, will be Selena Mackenzie with the Lifestyles Show. Hannah is with us, as always, with TRE in the afternoon, before Howard Burton joins us from Spain today, telling you all you need to know about the daily events in the country, and the repeat of this show at 7 o'clock. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. The WhatsApp, +34 645 1997 95. And you can check us out on the Facebook group, which is Talk Radio Europe Official. Going to move away from the Spanish, the headlines this morning saying that Britons may get 100% on Spanish taxes. I wanted to look at something that was making the headlines. It was in The Guardian yesterday, and I can hear some of you groaning already about that. This thing about, because young people, what are they like? If they're not just stopping oil, protesting against various wars and whatever else, and being offended and generally identifying as a toaster. This latest thing coming out, as Churchill may or may not have said, if a young person is not a liberal when they're 25, he has no heart. If he's not a conservative by the time he's 35, he has no brain. However, young people, research from the Open Society Foundations, which is a global network set up by billionaire philanthropist and here we go, because here's a trigger word, George Soros. Yeah, what was that? Yeah, thank you. It revealed that only 52% of British people aged between 18 to 34 think that democracy is a force for good. Hang on, I'm not finished yet. Right, amongst those aged over 55 or over, which I think we just come into there, chaps. I.e. old enough to remember Chescow, Hockner and all, the figure is 79%, which I still think is a troublingly low figure, but there you go. In a democracy, because you're allowed to think that in a democracy. Meanwhile, 29% of young people felt that a strong leader, their words, not mine, who did not hold elections was a good way to run a country. Even the Telegraph is saying, flaming Nora, quote unquote. Maybe that's a good, what happens after 13 years of Tory rule and a revolving door of prime ministers. But at least Brenda, not another one from Bristol, ought to be delighted. This is what happened to the young people taking to the streets. I'm thinking 1968, Paris, storming the barricades of Paris, etc. A strong leader, a Führer, if you will. Tim.
Oh, dear. The tremendously disappointing Generation X.
No, that's you're wrong. I'm Generation X.
With X
1965 to 1980 is X.
Well, what I meant was Z. And
Z and the
Z, as far as I'm concerned. And the point is that one has to have a reasonable sense of history and the reasons why we are living in this relative state of free speech and liberty. This was bought at a high cost. And the cost of democracy being that high and the lack of historical knowledge by the Generation Z is a huge disappointment. They have absolutely no concept of what living in a totalitarian state is or would entail, that all of their relative liberty would be gone. And the caution about what they're able to say and not say, and how they're able to employ themselves would also be gone. They're so stupid, and let's use that word, and I'll use it advisedly, how stupid Generation Z actually are.
And that was the message from Timothy Stafford. He'll be available for voting. Vote Stafford, makes sense. Jerry,
I don't have a degree in history like Tim, but the first thing I would say is how is this survey questions framed? Because when you get surveys, especially sponsored by an individual rich billionaire, you wonder what his motive was in the first place. And if you ask a question a certain way, you'll get one answer. If you ask the same question in a different way, you'll get a different answer. That happens in all surveys, so you've got to be really careful how you frame your questions. So maybe that's part of the problem here. But even if it's not, it's disappointing, going back to history, that history teaching in school is of such a low bar that people actually believe a totalitarian state is a good thing. I mean, we have Putin and we have North Korea and these examples that they're looking at and thinking, wish we were there.
Belarus, for example, if you criticise the leader there, it's 5 years.
Yeah,
in the slammer, as it were.
The revolving door of prime ministers over the last decade or so is a bit disappointing. But democracy is not an efficient way to run things. But democracy has checks and balances in it so that nobody who's in power has absolute power, because there are financial, there are newspapers, there are freedom of speech, and you can't in a democracy have absolute power. But if you give somebody absolute power, then the phrase is it'll corrupt absolutely. And that's why democracy is so good. If the history teaching in school is debased so much that it's just about dates and times and people's names, then you've missed the whole point of history, because it's about humans and how we behaved in the past.
I don't have a degree in history, but when I was at school, at Centre for Sadism Prep School and yes, a public school, the teachers that were employed at the time had all been servicemen during the Second World War, all fought for our liberty, and they were part of the history that I understand. That we are here enjoying life as we do for a reason, and the reason was their sacrifice.
952-788-4000. To the WhatsApps we go. Cookie, these flipping Just Oil protesters do my head in. What do they think their banners, mobile phones, spectacles, shoes, high-vis jackets are made from? Plastic, oil, proud Generation X. Yeah, thank you. Well, arguably, this is another one. Many people aren't very smart. They're like sheep following each other, hence voting for Brexit. Meanwhile, wokery eating itself. That's simple. I am making up a bed in my villa for Mr. Stafford. He will forever have a place here. There you go. But it is worrying because many generations says the way that you look at history and Churchill, for example, we have been through this whole thing about Churchill being an evil imperialist, etc., and being slammed by those who perhaps don't know their history in it, and judging, for example, historical events through a 21st century lens is inadvisable, for example. So you cannot put, for example, the things that have happened in 400 years ago or even 80 years ago through and look at saying, well, this person is in, I'm not saying this, no, let me just rephrase this. If you look at things in our way now that we look at how gender and whatever is viewed, you can't apply that back to historical figures because that wasn't the way that it was done in those days. I'm thinking, obviously, women's rights in the Victorian times, etc., because you can't do that. You can't you can't rewrite history or reimagine history and say, well, we're not representing these groups because there were certain groups who have been scandalously overlooked in our history, and they need to be represented more thoroughly. I'm thinking, obviously, I don't know, trans people during the Second World War, for example. I mean, you only have to look at Dudley Clark, who, if you are following Rogue Heroes, for example, he is the guy who originally sets up, and in the first scene you see Rogue Heroes in the first episodes of that last season, he appears in a woman's outfit, for example. You just nodded your head there, Jerry. I got lots of calls coming in suddenly. So here we go, to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hello, it's Gil from Calpe.
Morning, Gil.
Morning. Now, I want to say that I think democracy will end, and probably sooner than we think. Now, I'm not sure what will come instead, whether it be a dictatorship or whether it be something that hasn't existed yet, or we don't really know. But all the signs are that democracy is on the way out. Now, in ancient times, it wasn't considered a good system. Aristotle said that democracy is a very bad system, that it tends to be controlled by big business. I don't know how much big business they had in Athens in those days, but it seems that in 2,300 years, nothing changed. Plato also said it was a bad system. It said that democracy is a noble lie. And so did Socrates. And the Romans had democracy for about 500 years. And then came Julius Caesar and said, look, we've had enough of it. It's all corrupt. It's all governed by a few rich families with money. It's all to do with bribes and interest. It just doesn't work, And he said, I'm dictator for life. So I think it's coming to an end.
Okay, Tim.
I think that is extremely unlikely, Gil, really. But, Socrates was forced to take hemlock, I seem to recall, that because he was a very much an anti-establishment figure, an anarchic man. But that, let us say, democracy faces a challenge, and it has done recently because of this divisive, I'm going to use the word, wokefulness
Yes.
Has created divisions which tend to bring democracy into question about putting people in various groups and ascribing traits to each one of those groups. A highly sort of deconstructive way in which people, the young Generation Zs, have been educated.
That's right.
And, the waves of these things, as in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. These things, if one is well read, and obviously you are, that one comes to realise that the challenges to democracy and the sort of the greater awareness of the benefits of a singular or unilateral decision from a dictator or a totalitarian leader have some benefits. But in the end, freedom being the operative word, here we are with always imperfect democracy.
Yeah. Right, but there's supposed to be freedom, and yet the countries nowadays, show they're just hopeless solving problems like illegal immigration, for instance, which is changing the nature of our country. Let's suppose I lived, in the days of World War II. I was born much after that. And suppose I was a soldier and people would say to me, you have to go now and liberate France from the Nazis, yeah? Mm-hmm. I would have said at the time, no way I'm going to do such a thing. I mean, why go and risk my life to liberate France if in 100 years' time France is going to give up its country and hand it over to the Muslims? Which is what is happening. It just doesn't make sense. Might as well give it to the Germans. They'll keep it a European country.
Right. Okay, Jerry.
No, I'll go back to the original idea of democracy, which was in Greece. The point of that was it was a small group of people would be put together who represented different parts of society, and they would. So the whole point of democracy is to fulfill the will of the people. Now you will not get that with the dictator, and if young people haven't got that message and are still dubious about the way the question was asked of them, because it sounds like they were remembering the sketch from Monty Python, like what have the Romans ever done for us, etc. Right? So if you frame the question that way, you're going to get a different answer than saying, do you think the will of the people is more important than a dictator? Well, you'll get a different answer then.
Yes, but what we're supposed to have the will of the people, but what is happening is actually not the will of the people. We have an elite class which is controlling us. The majority of the people do not want what the elite classes, and the elite class consists from the media, the press, the professors, the professionals, the politicians, and they're there and they're controlling, and a lot of what the people want is very different, and that's why we have this populist movement in Europe, that shows that somehow we cannot get rid of. I mean, there's a disconnect, between the majority of the people, the working class, and this intellectual elite that is governing us, which thinks differently. So it's just not working, this democracy. It's not giving us the will of the people.
Thanks for your call. I've got some more calls coming in. Thanks for your call in. Morning, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Yes, morning, Giles. Is that me?
It is indeed you. Good morning, Gary.
Is it me? Yes, it's me, Gary. I wasn't sure then.
Yes, indeed.
Someone quoted. You sound very downhearted all of a sudden.
No.
Someone quoted.
I'm trying to control your level, Gary. That's all. And you just blew Tim Stafford's earlobes out.
Sorry, I'm a very loud person, aren't I?
Yes, indeed.
Sorry.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Happy New Year, Gary.
Someone quoted Plato earlier on. If I can just quote my grandmother, it's only the hairs on the gooseberry that stops it from being the grape. Now, that comment is totally irrelevant to this conversation, and I don't know why I said it for. But getting back to the original premise, is that, Giles, you just made a comment about compromise, etc. Why do we have to compromise? Sometimes things are wrong. It's just wrong. I believe you can have too much freedom. I lived under, now this is very controversial, this is a good one there.
Go on then.
I thought the other day when someone was talking about the same conversation, I think I read the same article, etc., and I lived under one dictatorship in Spain, under Franco for a little while, but did I live under a different dictatorship in Britain under Maggie Thatcher? God bless her. So there's nothing wrong with dictatorship as long as it's the right one for you. And that's the nub of the question, is that everyone's got their own lifestyles. But a lot of people now, and it is a generational thing, they feel entitled. Is someone giggling in the background there?
No. Not yet.
They feel...
Yeah. Sorry, Jerry just said not yet. That's all right, come on.
Shall I leave it whilst I'm ahead? But no, everyone feels entitled, and I hate this comment that said time and time, maybe I'm just getting old, I am old, but time and time again is where's my human rights? And I always counter that with, where's your responsibilities? Ooh. And on that low note, I thought I was doing quite well until I was laughed at.
No, you're not being laughed at. No, you're not being laughed at. We are just laughing with on that one. That's all, Gary. Please.
You're laughing with me.
We're laughing with you.
Can I just end, and I love TREs during the night listening, as you know, I'm an insomniac.
Yes.
But I woke up, I got out of bed the other day and I couldn't sleep because I was so angry. And that's another thing about getting up. I'm always angry.
Right.
Everyone put me down as a happy person, but I'm an angry person. And I'm fighting the world, especially for men. But anyway, that's another story. But I listened to on the World Service, they were talking, as they seem to now, about trans issues, women's issues, immigrants' issues, all the other issues. And the comment was made during the programme was that trans and drag, due to this gentleman that's passed away over Christmas time, and the RuPaul incident, etc., and they were talking about the drag family. Now, whilst they were talking about the drag family, which I'm going slightly off a tangent here, I know, but just bear with me, they were talking about the family, the drag family is a community, etc., and they all love each other and blah, blah, blah. Fair enough. Do what you want to do as long as it don't impinge on me. But when they quoted the remark about a 7-year-old, that's just wrong.
Right.
That's just wrong. Some things in life are just wrong, and there's too many people excusing the behaviour.
The only drag family that I know, Gary, are the ones who gather every Saturday at Santa Pod. Thank you very much for your call in.
Ta-ta.
Viewpoint with Giles Brown.
Now, for those of you who didn't get that Santa Pod reference, because people are looking at us, the dragster community. You see those people who do the quarter mile in high-powered vehicle rockets. That is the drag community. And I was looking at asking, because I know nothing about the drag community. I don't know what a RuPaul is or whoever this person was who.
I don't know what RuPaul would do on a standing quarter mile.
In high heels.
Oh, sorry, Tim. Chapeau, sir. The image of that. Actually, that could be great. That would be an Olympic sport.
Drag
racing on the standing. Well, at least you would be allowed to have. Yes, indeed, and you'd have the Trans Europe Express then, presumably.
But as long as it depends who's able to compete in this. Would you have
the quarter mile?
Somebody identifies as a drag.
Well, the thing is, this is nothing new though, because we grew up. Those of us who grew up in the 70s, etc., and 60s, we had Danny LaRue and Dick Emery and all that sort. I won't use the word to the lines we go. I'm being saved here, maybe. Morning, Cooley, live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Last call of the day.
Go on.
I feel as if you and the sports kid should investigate that further, because I was explaining to my brother this morning about some of the strange sports that you've discussed in the past and the perils of Googling it afterwards.
Yes, indeed. You must be very careful what you Google online. Indeed, there is
exactly. I couldn't remember what they they were. I gave this example of women wrestling in jelly, you know.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And there is, in fact, there is a Christmas game called in the Scandinavian countries called the Swedish Ring Game. Whatever you do, don't Google that, for goodness sake. Your browser will melt. Thank you very much.
Okay enough, my brother is a Norwegian citizen, so there you go.
Well, there you go. Then thank you very much for the call. To the lines we go again. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hi, Giles. It's Jason again. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Your thoughts on drag racing?
Well, drag racing, as in cars?
Well, no, that's what we were. Anyway, what can we do? Yeah, because we were just thinking about the standing start. Tim just came out with the classic line, which I will use in my promotions from now on in. But there you go. Right, what can we do for you, Jason?
Well, the world is drifting down an authoritarian direction. It's different to totalitarianism.
Yeah.
It's the next stage. And I don't believe we're in Georgia. I don't think we're approaching George Orwell's 94. I think we're actually in it in many ways. Now, you see people voting more extreme protest votes, more even conservative voters, more extreme parties are voting for. But this actually plays into the political elite's hand, because then there's a reason to create more control. Just like with COVID, there was more control. Draconian measures were taken. And when I went to the UK, I was astonished at the amount of surveillance. Now, I don't know if your listeners realise, but the UK per capita is the most surveilled country outside China. It is not a democracy. And people feel their freedom and rights getting shrunk ever more. We see the government trying to run down the National Health Service. We see it running down the pub trade in favour of more sophisticated drinking culture of Europe. The smoking ban, you smoke, but I agreed with it because it protected children. But now you see the government overreach, wanting people to stop smoking in beer gardens. Well, that's just bloody mindedness, taking somebody's human right away to harm himself when they're not harming anyone else. So the UK is a dictatorship. It's a nanny state. When I went to the Yorkshire Dales, thank God, there were not much cameras, but the authorities were trying to get the villagers to bring the cameras in, and there's a massive resistance in Yorkshire villages to this, because they see it as quite rightly as an infringement on their privacy. What is really scary is a lot of the younger people, when I ask them, they want more surveillance. It keeps them safe. And of course then the government says, yeah, you can have more. And before you know it, right, you are...
Are you building a stone wall while speaking to me?
You're very perceptive. I'm multitasking like a woman. Yeah, I'm not good at.
I can hear you dry stone walling in the background, Jason.
I can. Listen, I can do it. I've been doing it for 42 years. I can look at a wall and I can tell you if the person that built it was left or right-handed.
Right. Okay.
It's a lot of doing, right? But anyway, back on subject. So. The problem is that it's not where we are, it's where we're going to. And soon the technology is driving it, the artificial intelligence, the digital IDs that are going to come, the digital currency that will come as cash disappears. And we are being forced down a road. Most people can't really feel what's happening. They will when the cash disappears, but it'd be too late by then. So this is what's happening. We are in an authoritarian world.
Right. All right.
Far left or far right, it doesn't matter. It's playing into the hands of the government. That's a distraction.
You're building a wall to keep. You're building a wall to keep people out, then, presumably, or people safe. Jason, I'm going to have to go to an ad break because I've just realised I haven't put them in. But thank you very much for your calls in. There you go. Then you see multitasking a wide range of. Gary says he feels better. He feels better now for having had his little discussion. That's what we're here for. It's almost like free therapy. But here we go. Back after this break.
Viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe with Giles Brown.
Yes, indeed. Always live, always lively, and multitasking from there. Many things. Yes, it's 1984, not 1994. The Orwell book. Although that could be the sequel, of course. There you go. Tim, any thoughts about anything?
I didn't know we were live on.
Oh, no, we're back on air now. We are back on air. Yes, you see that's when I talk into the microphone. Believe
what
it or
would you
not.
like me to express?
No,
a
it's all right.
on? I mean,
yes. Okay. Okay. Oh dear. Says someone. France giving up their country to the Muslims. Meanwhile, Paul says, is Gary related to Whispering Bob Harris? I have to say, of all the people I would say that Gary is related to, then Whispering Bob is perhaps not the one for the old great whistle test.
I'd just like to say that I had my headphones on full volume.
Yes.
When Gary phoned in.
Yes.
My ears are now bleeding.
Oh, they're really bleeding.
Yes.
But going back to this whole thing, I mean, we talk about, you know, Gil said that, you know, the elites. And Jason said, you know, brought up that thing of which we do not talk, you know, the COVID and the restrictions and the whole thing. We're coming up to 4 years since that lockdown. And if it is a cunning plan by the New World Order, etc., then how come we're still doing this and we're not now in total lockdown, etc.? And it's all, you know. People will say, "Oh, well, the young folk might say that this democracy is great," but you know, I mean, North Korea, you can't have piercings, you can't have tattoos, you get jailed for wearing jeans. And I know that it might be a bit onerous to have to go and vote, whatever, for every 4 years, but surely it's better to be in that and say, to say, oh well, democracy, it's not working, and if you're in a dictatorship, if you're in an authoritarian, okay, fair enough. So what happens, you know, if you want a strong leader, what happens if you suddenly find yourself under Shahira law? I mean, that's not a democratic government. Would you prefer that one?
Again, it's back to how they asked that question, but like which kind of dictator do you want, and what kind of views do you want them to have, and what kind of religion do you want them to be, and like tick tick tick, no, I don't want that one, tick tick, no, I don't want that one, tick tick tick.
And by its very nature, you can't vote for a dictatorship.
I know.
You know, here's a range. We can have dictatorship light, you know, which is perhaps, you know, a ban on, I don't know, smoking in beer, you know, you can smoke in beer gardens on a Sunday, through to full-on generic, you know, eugenics, stroke authoritarianism, stroke, you know, and we know of which, we're coming up to the 80th anniversary of the end of the war in Europe, for goodness sake. I mean, so to facilely say that,
I would suggest that it's a lot more. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means or any stretch of the imagination. I really do like to have reliable, authenticated sources for everything I opine on. But I would say that the most dangerous thing that is happening, or has been happening in the last 5 years, is that it's not governments that are manifestly affecting our opinions. It is the social media who have control over that, and we are traduced into following streams of, or rabbit hole sort of colonized ideas that are affecting our opinions, and that who is in control of those things? Those are the people who have real control over our thoughts and deeds, and that will become increasingly difficult to contend with as time goes by. It might cease to matter who you're voting for, because the sort of tirades of popular, misguided, usually, opinion will force those governments, in any case, to bend to the will of the misguided. And there will be no authority in government. That's one of the great problems that may arise as people are continually sucked into the world of social media and internet use.
I mean, do you think that having, you know, like I said, there was the Zuckerberg thing is getting get rid of fact checkers. I mean, if you're on X, formerly Twitter, you'll notice on X, formerly Twitter, that the algorithm's gone. So if you go through, apart from having an awful lot more advertising on it, you know, on my timeline, let's face it, and everybody knows where I stand. I mean, and I'm getting Reform, stroke GB News, stroke Talk Radio presenters popping up, which is not, you know. So there is more of that happening. Just going to go to the lines before you come on, Joe. Just a second. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Giles, it's Peter again.
Hello, Peter.
Hello. Well, you said where you're standing. I'm standing right in the centre of my property at the moment.
Right, okay.
I I rule it with an iron fist. So
are you building some sort of structure, a wall perhaps? Because Jason's obviously Jason has raised the bar with being able to call it whilst constructing a dry stone wall.
Well, I'm obviously not as good as him. I can't tell right or left from building, but he's more than welcome to come and build a few for me. I've been doing it for several years, but obviously not as long as him. But it seems I started with a quote today and set something off. There's another one that I don't know who said it, but strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. And on we go. So it's not hard to guess where we are, is it? Because the strong men, and when I say men, I mean people, are stepping up. They're stepping up to the plate. They've realised we're in the bad times. Somebody has to do something about it. And I agree 100% with Gil that democracy is long gone. And if we continue down the road where we are, then it will be, won't even be a word barely. But when Washington has more lobbyists than politicians, when the richest houses are owned by the lobbyists in the political area of the United States of America, then we know who's running the world and running the country, because it certainly isn't the politicians. So that's not a democracy. And there's another quote, as the famous corn baron said back in the 60s, if there's 5 wolves and 1 sheep voting on what's for dinner, that's not a democracy, is it? So, democracy's barely, I can't think of a country that's really democratic. But also, many, many people of all ages go to places. I've got friends who visit, live, United Arab Emirates, Dubai, places like that. Now, they're all despotic leaders or whatever you want to call them, and certainly not democratic. Yet they're lovely countries to go to. And if you stay out of politics, it's a nice place to be.
But I mean, if you are working on these projects and they take your passport away, I'm playing devil's avocado here, obviously, Peter. Mm-hmm. But if you are a Bangladeshi worker and you're trying to build constructions for a new sporting event or whatever, and you're living in, I mean, that's surely not a model to go. I mean, because that's basically saying if you're a white person living in or you are one of the families, etc. I mean, the
Egyptians were slaves and they built the pyramids, but many of them had a fantastic life. The stonemasons going all the way down. They didn't have a challenge anything, they questioned anything. They had a good life. Franco surrounded himself with civil guards, had a great life. So as Gary nailed it, I mean, they're only a despotic leader if you don't agree with what they're preaching. If you disagree, then they're a despotic leader. If you agree, then you're going to go along with it, aren't you? So it's apples and pears, really. But the thing is, the general election, or the presidential election in America, I've heard it called the testosterone election. Because when you talk about, because I'm a boomer, I was born in 1960. Now, the reason it was called the testosterone election, because many 35 and unders voted for Trump, which wasn't expected.
Yeah.
And the reason, and I'm not talking young men, they use the testosterone, young people. And I've said before, when we talk about knife crime and things like that, I said the most dangerous thing you can arm a young person with is lack of purpose. And that still goes to this day. And I think the reason that Trump was so successful, and apparently a lot of credit goes to young Baron Trump, going on these podcasts, and people that watch these podcasts, and people knock it, and there's some fantastic people on these, and you get to listen to them, to listen to an opinion, to form your own opinion rather than be preached to. Now, the reason is mentorship. I've said so many times, I have a mentor to this day, and I'm 64, and he's about 14, 15 years older than me, and he has done me so many favors and turned my life around. Now, without him, I wouldn't be where I was now. Now, many, many young people are lacking that mentorship, and they're getting it from the likes of Joe Rogan, Patrick Bet-David. Now, when they're watching these for the first time in probably their lives, they're able to sit down, listen to a few guys, shoot the shit, guys, girls, whatever. In the old factory days, in the old building site days, when you went into the pig or you went into the canteen, that's what happened. And people put you right, corrected you for your behaviour, told you what you should and shouldn't be doing, and you learn at their knee or at their apron string. That's what you did. That's gone because governments have been interfering for too long. But it's coming back for some people because when they watch these, they feel involved, they listen, they learn, and that's probably why. And that's why many of them think, well, I'd rather have someone like that in charge, because not everybody is entrepreneurial. Not everybody can put in a 7-day week. Not everybody is able to save for a house. Many, many people rely on somebody else to guide them through life. So democracy is not all what it's cracked up to be. Certainly not. And I think Gil's right. We're moving in a different direction. Not imminently, but we're moving in a different direction. And Gary's right. One man's despot is another man's saviour. So I think...
Thank you.
I'll hand over to someone else for the final quote.
Thank you very much indeed for that one. Peter, if you want to get involved with the show, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And it's the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where you're calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Yeah, Giles, it's Gary again.
Hi, Gary.
Can I? Come on. I've only just got that whispering Bob Harris joke. That was funny, that.
Yes, go on.
Can I just say, emotions is a gift given to us by our ancestors. Cruelty is a gift we give ourselves. I don't know why I said that for, bye-bye.
And there you go. So, aren't emotions about...
I'm still thinking about the gooseberry.
He's still thinking about the gooseberry. It's my spirit animal, the gooseberry. Trust me, and my profile picture. There's an emotion. There's a brand of chocolates, I think, called Emotions as well. By the way, you see, there you go. I was going to say, should we list our top 10 favourite despots? Of which you like to be. Anyway, let's go to the WhatsApps we've got coming in. Right, here we go. This is one for you, Tim. People are sick of the wokery.
Yes, and it is slowly but surely being eroded by commonsensical thinking, because, let us say, as part of the wokery, they have DEI, rather than a sort of meritocracy as far as employment is concerned. But who, after all, wants to be operated on or be anaesthetised by a carefully selected, only for reasons of quoting, a dodgy anesthesiologist, or indeed flown by somebody who's not quite fully qualified in an aircraft. I know those sound trite examples, but the point is that this sort of general air of woke, the divisive wokery, is hugely destructive in all aspects of its ideology, and we can only hope that free speech returns. It's sufficient that we can make jokes at other people's expense.
And to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning, Giles. Peter Mijas Costa.
Hello, Peter.
Harking back to democracy, to my mind, there are at least two reasons why it doesn't work. One, the governments have given away all their authority to get things done by delegating it all to unelected quangos. A good example there is NHS England. The Secretary of State for Health has very few levers he can pull because it's all been delegated to NHS England. Mm-hmm. They're the people who get millions, plus billions to get on and do things, and totally fail on so many fronts. The other problem is the politicisation of the civil service. It used to be that ministers decided and then the civil servants got on and put it into effect, irrespective of the colour of the government. But they started to be politicised under St. Tony Blair, and it's just got worse and worse. We've had it a lot over the previous government, where government actions were specifically thwarted by civil servants working against it. There was a young lady was quoted a couple of years ago now, I forget which department she worked for, but complained bitterly that she was having to work for this quote-unquote damn Tory government. Look, for goodness sake, she's a civil servant. That's what she's supposed to do. If you don't like it, opt out. But They don't. They just sit there and thwart everything that they don't like. That's why democracy ain't working.
Thank you for your call in there. Jerry, you'd like to come in on something?
Two things to say there, right? First of all, I remember the hilarious BBC programme called Yes Minister, and that goes a long way back. The other thing, going back to the original point about Quangos, is you can't actually, just because a politician is elected to be a member of Parliament, doesn't mean he's an expert in healthcare or engineering or other things. You do have to bring in experts to help you make decisions, because you're totally incompetent and untrained to do that. So you have to bring them in. A bit interesting, we're having a discussion about unelected people making decisions for us, which I seem to remember the pre-Brexit debate. That's why we left the EU. But now we discovered we've got them at home.
Looking at the thing. Thank you. I'm talking about Quangos. I mean, I remember 30 years ago when I was the editor, believe it or not, of a property magazine back in the UK. I mean, we had LDDC, London Development Corporation. They were a Quango. Merseyside Development Corporation. Cardiff Bay. I mean, I went to Cardiff Bay in 1993 when it was literally a muddy flat, basically, and I thought there's no way this is ever going to happen. But Quangos such as Cardiff Bay Development Corporation, Merseyside Development Corporation, London, Docklands, LDDC, completely transformed those areas and made them into thriving communities.
Yeah, and Shirley Bassey in Cardiff Bay, she emerged from the sort of muddy salt flats of that particular little.
You started early. What?
And came with her sequin gowns.
What do you think, Botticelli or something?
No, she came with her sequin gowns and entertained us all. Quangos, I don't.
It's an opening ceremony. This wasn't like rudimentary fish.
No, not rudimentary. Well, I completely agree with Gil that we have to have expert advice, perhaps in a civil service sense or in advisory capacities, because politicians are simply politicians, mostly. Some lawyers and some others and some, occasional doctor here and there, but one might prefer to have expert opinion on difficult issues.
Indeed. Occasional doctors. Is that like occasional tables?
Yes, occasional tables, yes.
No, let's not even go there. Right, to the WhatsApps again. This is from Williamo. Says, make no mistake, if Kamala Harris got elected, Mark Zuckerberg wouldn't be making the sweeping changes he's doing now on Meta, as he realises that the people are now the majority centre-right, and he wants to keep on the right side of history. I mean, he wants to keep on the right side of Donald Trump, doesn't he? And he wants to get on that sort of thing.
I think that's even more important than history.
It is paying homage to Caesar as he comes in. I mean, we've got 4 minutes and 58 seconds. Just to let you know, by the way, there is going to be no Viewpoint next week. I'm not doing it in protest over Donald Trump coming into power, as some would say, but I'm having a couple of days off because I'll be reaching a certain age of my birthday. So
happy birthday to you. Have a good day.
Well, have a day off. Yes. In the immortal words of Blackadder, you can have a day off when you die. Baldrick.
No alarm clock.
No alarm clock. No, indeed. That'll be yes. Apart from the chickens in Coeen. But anyway, ahead of, let's have a quick, because we've got 4 and a bit minutes, panel. He's back. Donald Trump will be taking office by this time next week. We will have a Trump presidency, and if you had a crystal ball, I mean, if you were an Inuit sitting in Nuuk, which is the capital of Greenland, would you be grabbing your whaling harpoon and scanning the horizon for the American military?
Well, we talked about democracy and why it doesn't work or does it work or whatever, but actually it's a bit ironic that Donald Trump should actually be going to jail, but he's becoming president instead, so that's not happening. But Donald Trump has been going about Greenland before. He did it when he was president before. I'm sure the people in Greenland will start secretly rubbing their hands together thinking of all the cash they can get out of the Americans. I can't see Donald Trump invading Greenland. I mean, a population of about 250,000. You could march in there with about 80 soldiers if you want to do that.
That's what we thought about Vietnam and Afghanistan, though. You never know,
I think they had a bit more than 250,000 people, and it's a vast place. It goes right up into the Arctic Circle. It's full of rare minerals, ones that we need for modern technology we have to import from China. So there's lots of reasons why he would have his eye greedily hanging over Greenland, but let's see what the Danes think about it. He's insisting that the Danes don't have any legal right to it, but they've been running it for 500 years.
But also, if he did that, this would be a NATO country invading a NATO country.
Yep.
That's going to turn it on its head. You know that there are no life preservers on boats in Greenland. Because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because if you fall, because a mutual friend of ours went up to those who is half Inuit.
Oh yes,
and she did, and she took her then partner, and he asked why, and he said because the water is so cold that if you fall in it, you're gone in 30 seconds.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Yes, we do know an Inuit, and she's.
I know several. In fact, I was sitting at a dinner table once. We had 10 Inuits there, and we worked out that we had, because there's 100,000 people there, we had 0.01% of the population at the dinner table.
Indeed.
I think I read 250,000, but never matter.
Yes, well, anyway, it was a good story, Jerry.
That might be including the American forces that are already there.
Mustering at the border.
Well, I mean, many things are said.
Sorry, Richard's got involved. 57,000 people in Greenland.
How many?
57,000 people.
57? Oh, right.
Oh,
that's even less.
So I had 0.02% of the population that was in the table.
Yeah, you see, if you had a town of 57,000 people in England, there would be approximately 12 public houses. What?
Probably Kettering.
Kettering, yes.
It's not a verb.
Of your head.
Yes, I just thought, Right then, final thoughts, panel, because we're into the last minute of the show. Tim, your thoughts on what you've heard, apart from, the obvious, and obviously the brilliance of the RuPaul standing start quarter mile. Any wisdom you wish to impart to the listening millions and minions?
No, the machinations of various governments, the next incumbent president, and those things that keep us sort of vaguely interested in the world's affairs are one thing, but the essence of it is that we are living in our little worlds, and we've got our iPads and our little phones and all the little tiny comforts that we have, and if we remain near our fireplaces, then the world would be at peace.
Right then, thank you very much for that. Jerry, back in the real world, your thoughts?
Real world, I don't think democracy is ever going to go away. Obviously, from social media, there are a lot of people who aren't very clever around, but I still think the human race has a lot of nice people in it, and democracy will continue, and long may it continue and become universal.
Thank you very much. Okay, and thank you to Gary, who says it's the best show ever. Thank you very much for that one. Right, then, thank you for all your comments. Indeed, and this show will be repeated at 7 o'clock tonight. Thanks for your comments and your WhatsApp messages. Stephen Ritson is up next. Have a great rest of Tuesday. I'll see you for Let's Talk on Wednesday.
Views expressed on Viewpoint by invited studio guests and callers do not constitute an opinion endorsed in any way by Talk Radio Europe.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this program, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.